Welcome back inside the den. Another jam-packed episode for you guys. Thanks for joining. And with me, as always, is Chris Murray.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. Chris, we're here in the NSN studios, and it's maybe October, but I could smell basketball.
You can smell basketball?
Yeah.
Well, we were out of practice last week. So Nevada men's basketball had their first practice on Friday, the women on Sunday. So we got to go out for the first 30 minutes or so. Practices are not usually open, but usually the first practice you'll get a little bit of access. So we were not allowed to talk with any of the players, but we did talk with Steve Alford, and just being able to see the team in person. I mean, this is a much bigger team. This looks more like the Eric Musselman latter years teams, where you almost feel like you're looking at like an NBA-sized team. I mean, Nevada has 2 7-footers in addition to KJ Himes. They've got a 6'6" point guard. They've got a lot of fifth-year seniors on this roster. This is the most experienced, and Coach Alford said, deepest, fastest, strongest. I don't know if quickest was thrown in there. Most experienced, poised team to take the next step, which is win a Mountain West championship. So this should be a very exciting year for Nevada men's basketball fans.
Yeah, it's Daft Punk, bigger, faster, stronger, like that song, But it's they definitely looked the part on at practice. Definitely needed that after a disappointing end to the season in 2022. I mean, just absolutely dominated by Arizona State in the first four in the NCAA tournament. It's I think that was a point of emphasis. Really, they another thing he said was they wanted to get stronger, get faster, and just probably get a little more nasty. So what do? They go out and get a Tylen Pope, from Tulane, and it's a guy that he stood out. He may have been off to the side, but he stands out physically. That he's the type of guy that could be a tone setter that can, go underneath the board and wrestle for some rebounds and stuff like that. So it's an interesting group, and noticeably bigger. But kind of like we look back in the offseason, what they lose. Darian Williams to Texas Tech, Will Baker to LSU, and some big blows there. But I think they've done a nice job with some new additions.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a couple of very talented players, all conference players. I think they look at Will Baker and they say, okay, well, we might not be quite as good in the front court down in the post offensively, but we'll be better defensively. You have KJ Himes coming back from an injury. He looks a lot thicker. I mean, this guy was a giraffe when he came to Nevada, and now he's in his 6th season, and he's very thick and seems like a legitimate center body now. They added Jariah Coleman, who led junior colleges and blocked shots last year. He did play at the Division I level at the beginning of his college career. Didn't have much of an impact there, but he's at least had a taste of it. And then they add a top, 175 prep recruit, Jazz Gardner. He's 7'1" as well. So a lot more depth in the post, a lot more defensive oriented in the post. Tylen Pope's probably like a 6'5", 6'6" guy, but probably will end up playing a lot of power forward in terms of his toughness, his defense, his rebounding ability. So offensively, I think Nevada thinks they're not going to take any step back, but they should be better defensively, which was a major issue toward the end of the season. I mean, the end of last season, Nevada did just kind of fall apart. I mean, they lost to Wyoming on the road, last place team in the Mountain West. They cough up that game against UNLV in the regular season finale at Lawler in a game they should have won. They lose to San Jose State in the Mountain West tournament quarterfinals, the first time the Spartans ever won a game at the conference tournament. And then they don't look like they should be on the court against Arizona State. So up until the last 4 games, it was a hugely successful season. It was a big step forward from the year before. And now I think that gives this team, these guys who are coming back, motivation that, the season might have went really well, but those last 4 games were all kind of embarrassing in their own ways. So you did see that edge. Jared Lucas in particular was very vocal in practice, making sure that there are no corners cut, that every rep is as good as it can be, and that there is that intensity as they try and get ready to maybe win a Mountain West. Because I think this is one of the 4 best teams in the Mountain West this year. Boise State, San Diego State, New Mexico, and Nevada. I think those are your clear top 4, and we'll see if they can end at the top of those 4. Not going to be easy. San Diego State has a lot of its core back from last year's national runner-ups. Boise State, a very, very strong team as well, and New Mexico, maybe the 2 best guards in the Mountain West, and Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn. I'm sure Jared Lucas and Keenan Blackshear thinks that's them. And then they added some really good front court pieces as well. So I think the top 4 of the Mountain West is going to be very strong, which will mean a lot of really fun games. And Nevada's probably going to have to be a top 25 team if it's going to win the Mountain West regular season title.
It's certainly a competitive league, and since last season. Obviously, San Diego State made it to the national championship. Great run for them. But an element that Alfred talked about was depth, and they're legitimately like have good players from maybe 1 through 10. But what I'm interested to see is the further development of Keenan Blackshear and how he develops on offense. We know what he is as a defender, ultra athlete. But you look at like Hunter McIntosh, like does he slide into the point guard position, or does Keenan kind of retain that position, or they also have the flexibility to kind of like mix and match with it. McIntosh, of course, came in late last season after having a knee surgery, and didn't quite like get up to speed in time for the Arizona State game, so he was off. But it would be interesting to see if McIntosh is what they thought he was going to be last year, and if he steps in and gives them much more scoring output than he did last year. If that's the case, then you have a luxury of being like, hey, we'll float Blackshear into the 3 and let him create in space versus just running the offense. And it did work well last year, but if you have a guy like McIntosh back in action, then it's it bodes well for the offense.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Alford said Keenan will stay at point guard, but that doesn't mean throughout the entire 40 minutes or the entire season. I think being able to play him off the ball at times will be beneficial. You could see sometimes he would get frustrated and kind of put his head down and get into foul trouble. I think with Keenan, it comes down to 3-point shooting. If this guy shoots 35% from 3, he's probably the Mountain West Player of the Year. He's that talented in everything else that he does. He really struggled to hit threes last year, so you can kind of play off him. Because with that size, if you have to play up tight against him, he's got such an explosive first step, and he's got such a strong body that he's going to be able to get to the rack or get to the free throw line, and he's a very good free throw shooter. So his big challenge is threes, and I think the whole team, you look at them, 3-point shooting is a very big concern. Jared Lucas is one of the better 3-point shooters in the Mountain West, but they do lose Will Baker, who is a good 3-point shooter. They do lose Darian Williams, who is a good 3-point shooter. Now, can Hunter McIntosh come in and hit high 30s and threes? I think that would be really big. Tyler Powell, I think, will have an expanded role. Can he shoot high 30s and threes? Can Keenan Blackshear get better at shooting threes? Can Nick Davidson become more consistent at hitting threes as a stretch power forward? I think that, and then the defense being elite. I think Nevada was okay defensively last year. If you want to win a Mountain West championship, you kind of need a top 40 defense. And Nevada was not top 40 defense good last year. That's why New Mexico kind of always struggles when it gets into conference play, is because they don't lock down defensively. San Diego State's going to be great on defense. Boise State's going to be great on defense. That's why those two programs are going to be at the top of the standings at the end of the year, battling out for a championship. And Nevada has not been great defensively since its last season under Eric Musselman. So it has made some gains there, but I think that's why they specifically targeted this offseason, getting better defensively, specifically in the front court. If they're able to do that, then they can win a Mountain West championship, because Trey Coleman is an all-league defender. Keenan Blackshear is an all-league defender. That's 2 of your 5 on the all-league defensive team coming from Nevada. Now, if KJ Himes plays like he did in the first 4 games last year, now you have an all-league defensive player at center as well, and then you can really be competing to win NCAA tournament games. So I think all the pieces are there. We'll just see how they gel. The last time Steve Alford said this is the most deepest team I've had was 2 years ago when Nevada went 13-18. So things can unravel quickly, but in terms of having all the elements you want to have a championship level good team that can win NCAA tournament games, this team has it because of the experienced backcourt play, because of the depth in the front court and the defensive ability, because of the depth overall, and then the experience, because you do have Keenan Blackshear in year 5, you do have Jared Lucas in year 5, you do have Trey Coleman in year 4, you do have KJ Himes in year 6, you do have Tylen Pope in year 5 or 6. So you're talking about potentially a starting 5 that are all in their 4th, 5th, or 6th year of college basketball. This is going to be one of the oldest teams in the country.
Yeah, they have that veteran leadership. You mentioned the team 2 years ago, they kind of succumbed to culture ultimately, and players that mesh. In returning so many players and foundational pieces like a Jared Lucas, like a Trey Coleman, like a Keenan Blackshear, and familiarities there. So I think they'll have a strong chemistry and a strong leadership group. So you wouldn't have to worry about there. But I think what should excite Pac fans about the potential of this team is that depth. They can roll out teams in various looks, right? Like they could match the size of like a Boise State, or they can go and become speedy like a New Mexico, right? You can match the physicality or the speed by simply tweaking the lineup a little bit, right? But the return of KJ Himes will definitely be a boost to the defense because he is an all-conference defender type. But again, it remains to be seen if he could stay healthy for an entire year.
Yeah, that's
Again,
the
he's coming
question.
off a back surgery. That's you never know with backs, right?
Yeah.
But to add a Jazz Gardner and a Jeriah Coleman, two guys north of 7 foot, that's a good luxury to have because you can go big and face off against the more physical teams in the Mountain West. But you could also, we've seen last year, go lighter, like with Nick Davidson at the stretch four, or even you can even throw in Tylen Pope there at the stretch four with his physicalness. He's 6'6", but he is a really effective rebounder. So, kind of plays above his height. Like, back in the day, you think of, Cameron Oliver or what's his name?
Tyron Criswell.
Yeah, Criswell.
Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, exactly. Just that guy that can go in there and scrap it up and be able to run at a good pace and get down the court and contribute some in the offense. So
Yeah, Nevada didn't play very fast last year.
Yeah.
I think that was because of the lack of depth because they
Yeah.
had some injuries. We'll see if they play a little bit faster this year because really you look too deep, they're pretty solid. I think one area where they might be a little bit weaker is on the wing in terms of like having a scoring like 3-and-D like long wing. You have Trey Coleman. I mean, I guess Daniel Foster sits in that mold. Tyler Powell, if he's good, sits in that mold. I think Pope will mostly play the 4, and Davidson will mostly play the 4. So I don't necessarily anticipate them playing like the wing spots. That would kind of be where Blackshear was, but now they moved him to point guard. So there's a lot to like about the roster. There's a lot to like about this group of guys, their experience, what they've been through together, and we'll see if they can go out there and live up to those expectations. Because you look at the non-conference schedule. I mean, there's not a lot of like super difficult games on that schedule. You look at, the game at Washington. That's probably the most difficult, and Washington was a subpar Pac-12 school last year. So Nevada should be able to get at a non-conference. They play 14 games with maybe around 12 wins. So let's say they go just 12-6 in Mountain West play, which they did last year. That's 24 wins. Let's say you get maybe a win or two in the Mountain West tournament. You could be looking at 25, 26 wins pretty easily. So yeah, I think given how the football season has gone, Wolfpack fans need something positive to look forward to. And I think this men's basketball team has that potential to go out there and be kind of that, point in the community that gets everyone reinvested in what Nevada Athletics is doing. Certainly the announcement with the Grand Sierra Resort and maybe getting a new Nevada arena in the upcoming years was a huge thing that everyone rallied around and got very excited about last week. But we'll see if this team, still a couple years away from moving to that potential arena, can bring some more, super memorable moments to Lawler Event Center like they did last year when they beat back-to-back top 25 teams at home in San Diego State and New Mexico.
Yeah, those are some electric moments last season. We talk about the arena and huge news. I mean, $1 billion investment, obviously remains to be seen if that goes through, but definitely a huge investment towards Nevada basketball and kind of cements Nevada as a basketball school. You kind of think about kind of like playing fortune, looking at the years ahead and what could that do for the program, like to have a facilities like that, and just world class, like a world class arena that could host big events.
I mean, it would be huge for Nevada basketball. Stephanie Remp actually said, we know this is a basketball community, which I thought was interesting because I've written before that Nevada is a basketball school, and the former athletic director, Doug Newth, wouldn't be very happy with that comment. So to see an athletic director actually say that has been very interesting. And, she's only been here for a year and a half, and she saw how the community rallied around Nevada basketball last year and how difficult it's been to get that same support for Nevada football. So I get from that perspective. But it basically, if this does happen, it's about a $400 million arena. It's about 10,000 fans. It could hold concerts, Disney on Ice, monster truck events. They listed all the things. I think it's really being built, if it does get done, for Alex Morello. He owns the GSR and the NHL's Arizona Coyotes. I think it's really getting built for his AHL franchise, which is in Tucson. Their lease is up after the 25-26 season. This stadium's expected to open in 26-27. So I don't think it's coincidental that timeline matches up about an 18-month build as soon as they break ground. But it also would be the home of Nevada men's basketball. So you talk about They're in the middle of building an $8 to $12 million players room, locker room, players lounge. They have a $3 million basketball practice facility that opened 2016, and then a $400 million arena with all of the modern amenities, good enough to potentially host NCAA tournament games. That's a top 25 facility infrastructure. So then you would expect top 25 results to come as a result. Steve Alford said that if this arena gets built, it gets them into the homes of players that they couldn't get to before. Before they were looking for good. Now they can get elite in terms of the kinds of players that they can get to come to this school. There's also an NIL component where Nevada would get maybe up to $500,000 in terms of their NIL packages in the partnership with the GSR. They already have an NIL package of around $500,000 for their team. So it really would boost Nevada to the next level if this does happen for 2026-27. Obviously, Steve Alford's on a long-term contract, so you have stability there at the head coaching role. Now you have improved facilities. Now you are competitive in NIL. And I think being the Gonzaga isn't easy, but you would have all of the elements you would need in terms of a big-time named head coach, big-time infrastructure, competitive in NIL, really good history over the last 25 years of making the NCAA tournament and winning some games and winning Mountain West and WAC championships, that you can go out there and have a huge sale pitch to the recruits you're going after, that this community cares about basketball, and it's shown that with all of these facilities that you'll be able to call home.
Yeah, it's exciting, an exciting prospect. And yeah, again, like you'll be competitive if this thing becomes like a reality with new recruits, or even an NIL and transfers and stuff like that. So they've never had a problem fielding good players, especially in college basketball. So it's an exciting prospect, but yeah, if you go from good to great, then you can step into the threshold of being a Gonzaga, and like the consistency there. And again, like we don't know what conference realignment's going to look like, right? If the Mountain West eventually dissolves into the Pac-2, or if they how that realignment works. So it's going to be a new world when 2026 arrives, but I think it's one that is going to be the NSN Tonight thing is going off right now. Sorry, the technical difficulties came in over the NSN studio, and we're just talking about the arena and how exciting it is, and to bring great players to the to the 775. But kind of reeling back to 2023 in the current season, what players are you looking forward to, seeing it develop, or just star in this upcoming campaign?
Yeah, well, we did ask Steve Alford what the players thought of the new arena, and he said they hadn't talked about it. So that kind of shows that it's a long ways down the road. But one player who may play in that arena, if everything works out well for Nevada, is Tyler Rollison. He's a point guard from Southern California who was a top 175 national recruit. Wasn't hugely recruited in terms of scholarship offers from big name schools toward the end of his time there in high school. But, again, we're seeing 35, 40 minutes of practice, but he looked like he was ready to play right now. So he kind of steps into that Trey Pettigrew role of, maybe he'll get 10 to 15 minutes at the start of the season. And if he plays well enough, maybe he does grow into that backup point guard. He's going to be fighting against Hunter McIntosh, a very experienced player, for minutes. But he looked good in that short stretch that we saw in terms of his length, defensive ability, ability to have some shot creation and then hit a couple of threes. So I think, a young guy, and Nevada's a pretty experienced team. So I don't know that the freshmen are going to play a huge role. But both him and Jazz Gardner, the other, true freshman who is top 175 national recruit. It's always kind of interesting to see how these guys evolve in their rookie seasons. But Tyler Rollison in particular is somebody that I'm keeping my eye out on for.
Yeah, I mean, we went to practice together, and he stood out. Kind of has that quick twitch, it's that fast switch that you look for. And it's just the spark to get off the, just to get off the dribble and go drive. He definitely looks the part. And again, Nevada will ultimately be looking for more offensive output from players. So, we'll see if it comes from the freshmen. But Alford did say, he's like, I don't shy away from playing freshmen.
I think you look at when he was at UCLA, he had Lonzo Ball and TJ Leaf, and it's easy to play those freshmen. Darian Williams played quite a bit last year as a freshman. Nick Davidson was a redshirt freshman. But, I think this team is so experienced and deep, it's going to be hard for a freshman to make a major impact. But also, you kind of have to give the freshmen some minutes if you want to get them for year 2 and 3. So that's kind of a delicate balance. Is how many minutes do you give the freshmen, specifically in non-conference? Maybe if you get some open, scores to be able to try and get them to develop, so they can be key players in the postseason, but also give them enough that they do want to come back the following year. So that's a delicate balance there that any coach has to really skate on. But he could just point to Darian Williams and say, like, if you're good enough, we're going to play you a lot of minutes. That guy was the Mountain West Freshman of the Year last year.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of transfers outside of freshmen, what transfer is going to have the biggest impact on Nevada?
Well, I think it has to be Tylan Pope. I mean, it's really just him and Jariah Coleman in terms of the transfers for this year's roster. And I think Coleman, if KJ Heim stays healthy, is going to be your 10 to 15-minute backup in terms of giving you defensive big man minutes. I think Tylan Pope in particular could play 25 to 30 minutes. He kind of replaces Darian Williams in terms of he can play multiple positions. He can, kind of be a glue guy and give you whatever your team needs on that night, be able to distribute the ball, be able to play defense, be able to rebound. Probably not a guy who's going to go out there and score double digits like, every single night. But I think Tylan Pope is very specifically crafted for this team because what he can give them in terms of toughness on the interior, which Nevada felt like it lacked last year with Will Baker in particular. So, I think he's the guy who, among the transfers between those two, is going to have the most impact on this year's roster.
Once you finish my sentence, Nevada basketball wins the Mountain West if?
Keenan Blackshear wins Mountain West Player of the Year. I think he has the highest ceiling of anybody on Nevada's roster. Jared Lucas is a very, very good player. I think you pretty consistently know what you're going to get from him. I think if Keenan can take it to the next level and have a Martin twin caliber season, which he's capable of, he's a very similar size, he has a very similar skill set. If he plays like the best player in the Mountain West, I think Nevada wins the Mountain West. If I were to give you a second one, I would say finish top 40 in Ken Pomeroy's advanced defensive metrics. If they play that well defensively, they got a chance to win the Mountain West.
Certainly. It's an exciting prospect. We'll be gearing up for the Nevada basketball season in the coming weeks, but an exciting time for Pac fans with the arena news and with the current state of the roster. But it should be an exciting 2023.
Yeah, tip-off's only about 35, 40 days away, so we'll be there soon enough.
Yeah, we'll see you guys inside of Lawler there for those lone few years that we have there. We'll make it nice and raucous. But thanks as always for joining me, Chris.
No problem.
And we'll be back for more episodes of Inside the Den, detailing football, basketball, all things Nevada. So thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.